Sony has just released the first trailer for Morbius, and we at The Binger have a lot of questions. Is it in the MCU, for one? Will Jared Leto be able to right the wrongs of Suicide Squad? More importantly, who is Morbius? Is he a vampire? What are his powers and what are his weaknesses? Michael Morbius began his fictional life as a biologist with a blood disease. His condition cursed him with a strange face, but his vocation as a scientist got him a Nobel Prize. He was happily engaged, pursuing a life of learning with his trusty sidekick Nikos by his side. Life was pretty good for this Greek biologist, but unfortunately for Morbius and almost everyone else, his condition took a turn for the worse, and he found out he didn't have much time left to live. He decided to cure himself by using electroshock therapy and vampire bats, and it actually kind of worked. He stays alive, but he gets much paler and much thirstier for blood.
I can hear every heartbeat around me, and I can defy gravity.
He immediately turns to Nikos, his trusty sidekick, and sinks his teeth into his neck. Then he begins to fantasize about the warmth of his fiance's blood, so he decides to throw himself into the ocean rather than eating his bride-to-be.
Bye, Felicia.
Hell no!
Bye, Felicia.
From his birth as a kind of vampire, Morbius is a villain who wants to drink human blood. But he's conflicted too. This is why years later he becomes less of a straight-up villain and at times even an anti-hero. But aside from his new vampire desire, Morbius also gets some superpowers. These include superhuman strength, speed, stamina, agility, reflexes, sight, and smell. He's also got fangs and claws to help pierce people's skin and get at that sweet, sweet blood. He can also glide through the air, but only for short distances. And that's pretty much Morbius. Over the years, there have been countless different versions of him in the comics, but for the most part, he retains all the traits we've listed so far. But what about his weaknesses? As a vampire, or at least a pseudo-vampire, one of Morbius's biggest weaknesses has got to be vampire hunters. Although there have been plenty of vampire hunters in movie and comic book history, Morbius's main adversary among them has been Blade.
Call me Blade, and all I want, vampire, is to destroy you!
In the comics and in SpiderMan the animated series, Morbius has to fight both Blade and Spider-Man, who reluctantly team up to take down the pseudo-vampire. Morbius was also supposed to appear at the end of the original Blade movie. In a DVD version of the film, there's a scene with someone who looks kind of like Morbius in it. As Blade and Karen climb above ground into the sunlight, they see a mysterious figure standing on top of a nearby building, and it looks an awful lot like Morbius. Years later, David Goyer, who wrote the scene, said that it was indeed him. He also said that if he'd gone on to direct the second Blade instead of Guillermo del Toro, Morbius would have been the villain, or at least the conflicted antagonist. Now, you may remember that Marvel Studios has confirmed an MCU reboot of Blade, starring Mahershala Ali, which could mean that the two will finally get to appear together on the big screen. But that's assuming the movie's status in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which, as it stands, is a little confusing. But more on that later. For now, back to his weaknesses.
Can you blush?
As a pseudo-vampire, Morbius is immune to a lot of the trivial little things that end up being the demise of most vampires. If you stick a cross in his face, he'll be fine. Impale him with a silver crossbow bolt or shoot him with a silver bullet, and he'll be less fine, but not because of the silver. Daylight doesn't affect him as much as other vampires either, but he still doesn't really like it. And we're guessing he probably doesn't need to be invited to walk into a building. The one thing he does have in common with classical vampires is his desperate need for blood. If he wants to keep his energy up, he's got to find a human to leech off of.
I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire!
Although it's not the biggest weakness, it isn't exactly convenient to take blood-sucking breaks in the middle of high-stakes fights with Spider-Man or Blade. And practicality aside, Morbius is conflicted about preying on unsuspecting humans.
I do love you, Felicia. I must get help to be changed back to my human self.
This inner conflict has become the main driving force of every Morbius story, as you can see by the countless frames of him grabbing his hair like a soccer player who's missed an easy penalty kick.
How on earth did he miss that?
He goes the long way round, plays that across, and Aguero somehow misses.
He's a biologist who, when trying to save himself and others, ends up turning into a living vampire. The way that he solves this problem for himself is by vowing to only drink the blood of people who really deserve it. If I must drink blood, he says, let it be the blood of the corrupt, of those who deserve to die, the blood of the guilty. As we all know, letting one person be judge, jury, and executioner never ends well, especially when that person is also a vampire with an uncontrollable thirst for blood. This kind of vampire ambivalence has made its way to the big screen before, with varying degrees of success. There's the Twilight version, the vegetarian vampires who only suck the blood of animals. Edward Cullen compares it to human vegetarians. It's like a human only living on tofu. It keeps you strong, but you're never fully satisfied. Or there's What We Do in the Shadows, where the vampire's moral conundrums are more about the unfortunate social consequences of being a vampire.
The trouble with being a vampire is you have to be invited in.
Now, so far we've been talking about the weaknesses that exist within the character of Morbius. But there are bigger threats, not just to Morbius the character, but to Morbius the movie. The first of those is Jared Leto. Fans of comic book movies have been scared of him ever since Suicide Squad, where he played the Joker. Not because his version of the Joker was particularly scary, but rather because it was so particularly bad. His Joker ended up being a contrived and short-lived character who only got about 10 minutes of screen time. Leto, who is 48, seemed desperate to make his Joker hip with the kids, which to him means Machine Gun Kelly with green hair. He also made a big stink about the method behind his character's madness.
Jared, he went full Joker, you know, and the rule generally is never go full Joker.
Staying in character all day and giving his co-stars what he called gifts from the Joker. These included a dead pig, a live rat, and a used condom.
Who did you send used condoms to?
Oh, everybody. Maybe they didn't want to tell you,
But Jared Leto's got a bad rap. Maybe the Joker just wasn't for him. After all, he used to be known for his emo band more than anything else. If you spend 30 seconds watching the music video for The Kill by his band, 30 Seconds to Mars, you might start to change your mind about Jared, who honestly already kind of looks like a vampire. And then there are the obvious, provocative, and confusing hints that this trailer has dropped about the never-ending Sony Marvel saga. First of all, Sony is clearly trying to cash in on the dark but also very weird tone that made Venom so much money, even though it was such a critical flop. This film exists in the same universe as Venom, as we are reminded right in the middle of the trailer. 2 minutes and 9 seconds in is another provocative shot. We see Jared Leto dressed in an orange prison jumpsuit with a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. On the wall that he's walking by is a drawing of Spider-Man with the word murderer scrawled on top of it. This graffiti points in two completely opposite directions. One is towards the year 2002, when the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man came out. The Spider-Man on that wall behind Leto is not Tom Holland's or Andrew Garfield's. It's clearly from one of the 3 Tobey films. But then the word on top of it, calling Spidey a killer, is a reference to the events at the end of Far From Home, when Mysterio sends an edited clip of Spider-Man to the Bugle, revealing his identity as Peter Parker and making it look like he massacred a bunch of people in London. If Morbius is set after Far From Home, how will it tie in a 15-year-old version of Spider-Man? Maybe we're in for a headache-inducing multiverse cop-out, or maybe not. There's another reference to the MCU Spider-Man at the end of the trailer, when Morbius runs into Michael Keaton of all people.
What's up, Doc?
This could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship, but then there's also the fact that Keaton played Batman and Leto played the Joker. But he also has to make an appearance in one of the Sony spin-offs, so this could be the one. And of course, there's Blade, who seems fated to make an appearance in this Marvel-associated vampire movie. But if it's too hard to navigate all the rights, Lil Uzi Vert would probably be down. How are you feeling about Jared Leto's return to a supervillain role? Will he make amends for his past mistakes? Let us know everything you think about Morbius in the comments and subscribe to The Binger for more.